Hi. So we're sitting out here on our patio, and my wife, as usual, is attempting to get me to memorialize stories rather than just talk about them, which I love to do. I love to just talk about things and remember things as they happen. And one of my favorite subjects, obviously, is my brother Joe, who I love dearly. And he's one of the funniest men I know. He has the greatest sense of humor. I often, say that I've heard his jokes 1,000 times over 40 years, and they still make me laugh. He tells a particular joke which has a punchline that says ham and cheese on white, and he does it with a mishkina face, and I've heard him do it 1,000 times, and every time, right now I'm thinking about it and I'm laughing because he just touches me with his humor. Well, Joe has a favorite story he tells about this fictional character called Rudy. And Rudy, as the story goes, meets a doctor in Brooklyn, and the doctor's there, and he's rubbing his head, and he's in problems, and he's sad, and Rudy approaches him, and he one thing leads to another, and it makes it clear that anything can improve. You have to enjoy life. Anything can improve, and especially you have to reach out to the people your friends, and celebrate life with them. And the doctor says, well, I don't know many people. Rudy, he says, how about you, Rudy? You know people? And Rudy says, I know everybody. And he goes on, my brother goes on, telling this story about Rudy. And this, depending on the amount of people that are around, the story can go 30 minutes, 2 days, a week later he'll still be talking because he embellishes. He's a great embellisher. And the story goes, people that he knows in Brooklyn and in New York, and they take a flight to Hollywood, and they go, and ultimately they end up. He says to the doctor, he says, I even know the Pope. And the doctor says, impossible, you can't know the Pope. He says, I know the Pope. So they get on an Alitalia flight, they fly to Rome, they're right there in the square, in Vatican Square, and Rudy says, I'm going to go up and talk to the Pope now, but you can't come in. He says, but I'll bring him out to the balcony. And when you see him out there on the balcony, he'll wave to you, and you wave back. I'll be with him. That way you'll know I really know him. So the doctor says, okay. So Rudy goes in and he meets with the Pope, and they chat and they embrace, and they come to the balcony, and he looks down, and there's his friend on the ground, lying on the ground. And he says, oh my God, he had a heart attack. What are you doing? And he says, oh my God, he had a heart attack. And he runs down to see his friend, and his friend is barely breathing. He's on the ground, and he's waving air in front of him, and there's people standing around. And he says, I'm so sorry, the shock was overcoming to you. And the doctor looks up, he says, that's not it, Rudy, that's not what happened. So he says, well, what happened? What happened to you? He says, I was standing there looking at the balcony. Sure enough, the door opens. 2 figures come out on the balcony, and these Japanese people standing next to me says, who's that on the balcony with Rudy? And so I collapsed. Now that's the story, that's the joke. Well, here's the best part of this joke. My brother and I were in Rome. We went to the Vatican, and as we're in the Vatican, we're waiting online to go into the Vatican, and we look up, and I say to my brother, that's the balcony where the Pope and Rudy came out. My brother instantly goes into the routine. And he says, oh, yeah, that's what he was with Rudy. And this is the spot. Right here is the spot where the doctor collapsed on this floor. And there was a ring in the concrete, some symbol on it. And the people around us from all different countries are listening. And they're listening. And my brother's embellishing this thing. And one woman taps me on the shoulder. She says, half German, half English. She says, my son's name is Rudy too. And I said, oh, really? And Joe says, I wonder if it's the same, or maybe he's a cousin to Rudy. And anyway, the crowd starts to move to enter the building. And as they move, Joe and I start moving, and the crowd will not step on that Holy Grail spot on the floor that Joe says, that's where Rudy was. And they're going around. People are crossing themselves. They're not to step on that spot where Rudy was. And my brother and I are looking at each other, and I know he's doing the same thing I am, biting the inside of my cheek not to laugh, because Rudy is a joke. It's just a joke. But Joe made him famous and immortal. That's my brother Joe. Bye.